Hey guys, I decided to post this video, the Reddit challenge that I did. I edited it down from a long stream. It took about an hour and a half to do everything completely from rocket design here, as you see, to getting all the way to the moon and dealing with all the problems that I encountered along the way. I've just decided to show you the entire construction process as far as I saw it. I already had a rocket built that could pretty much do everything I needed to, so I decided I'll just put a lander on top of that and get myself there and land with the lander. I ended up using radial engines on the lander, which were not available on the main craft, so I could put a rover on the bottom and drop the rover down on the ground. The rover is part of the challenge. If you do it with the rover and are able to actually drive it around with a Kerbal on it, you get hard mode completed. And that was what I was after. I'd never, ever built a rover before, and never used one. So I just went with about as basic as you can get, just a little box there with, it has some electric charge in it. It's basically designed for allowing the simplest rovers possible. You put some simple wheels on it, you put a few solar panels on it, and then you've got enough power to get yourself a simple little rover that'll take you across the surface of the moon. I basically had no idea what I was doing, so I just put a few wheels on there and put it on the bottom of a decoupler that would let me just kind of drop it as I was hovering above the surface. There, the wheels are all on, and then I'm going to flip it over and put the seat on it. It's just easier for construction to do it this way. Put the seat on correctly, and then I think I get a solar panel or two out, and then I'll be on my way, I think, to testing. I did a few test runs on this spaceship before actually flying it, just to make sure all the rover and everything would be working. You'll notice there are some flaws in this rocket design. That's what the testing is for. Here I'm just about finishing putting struts on there to make sure everything doesn't wobble around when I'm first taking off. And then we'll get to see some of the problems I discovered during testing. Also, things blow up, so I figured I'd show you that as well. I think this is running at about 2 times speed, while the rocket construction you just saw was 4 times. We've got 5 Kerbals in the spacecraft right now, 2 inside the lunar module. When we do the actual launch, we'll only launch with 3. Basically, consider this a simulation. That's supposed to happen, I swear. Basically, I wanted to control the lunar module and see if what I was doing was feasible. As you see, the disconnect there, decoupler just launched the lunar module quite far away. So I figured, well, if I can't do that this time around, I'll go and at least try and land my module. And many of the astute of you may have noticed that my landing struts were upside down. And that was a problem that was like, I should have really noticed that before. So I go back and fix that and do another test run. Yes, those explosions were supposed to happen, I swear. And then this time I am careful not to eject the rover, and I'm careful not to have upside down landing gear, and I actually make a successful landing on Kerbin, having dropped the rover, although slightly damaging it, as you'll see. And I'm able to run it around even with only 3 wheels. And also successfully tested every other part of the system, Kerbal's EVA, and driving around their rover like happy little madmen. Dropped the rover a little hard. The force of the decoupler. Decoupler may not be the best way to actually land a rover. Probably is what's really what I'm doing wrong. But it works, and the landing legs are very strong. They're able to withstand a landing like that on Kerbin. They'll be just fine on the moon. I'm not going to be too worried about flipping over or anything. This is quite a wide craft. So we go ahead and run over to our lander, see the problem, just give it a try anyway. Get in our little seat, and just a moment here, he'll take off about as fast as you can with 3 wheels on an electric vehicle. That's pretty much exactly what I expected to happen, but that's awesome. My first semi-successful test of the rover. And now, after this, we go pretty much straight into the launch. There are still problems with the spacecraft that are not discovered until far later, but we'll see those as they come. As far as the launch, it's a standard profile. You launch up, drop your tanks as they go empty, 10,000 meters do your turn. Try to avoid getting terminal velocity, which is, you just basically stay below 250 meters per second until about 10,000. That's good enough for now. Get a little bit of rotation here, it's not really a big deal. The struts are keeping everything pretty stable. And this craft actually really isn't quite that long. It's not going to see much springing or pogoing or anything you might expect like that in a really, really long spacecraft. The 4 tanks on the outside lasted a little longer than they normally do, but they're going to get ejected rather soon by Separatrons. And there they go, looking gloriously as they fly away. And then we're able to use the big orange tank for circularization and about half of the lunar injection burn. It will happen in just a moment. And then there's an engine inside the command module, or service module as you might say, from the Apollo terminology, that has the extra delta V needed to make the entire injection. You'll notice that the command module also has landing struts just in case of emergency. It actually does, I think, have enough fuel to land on the moon and bring everybody back. But as you know, for the requirements of this mission, it's not supposed to land, it's supposed to stay in orbit. It was a ship that I already had for going to Minmus or the moon, and it just wasn't quite capable of the rover, so the lander was not only part of the challenge, but also needed for getting the rover on the moon. Here we come around Kerbin and are about to make our burn. The sunrise, and not too long from now we'll have a moonrise. There it is, and try and keep myself a little careful, don't want to burn too hard. I think I do some time acceleration here, physical time acceleration to speed up the burn, and the craft will kind of crunch itself together. So you want to be careful when using physical time acceleration while burning. If you have too much thrust, you'll kind of crunch together your ships. And the docking ports are not that strong, really. So there I turn off the maneuver node and do the final tweaking by hand. And here we go, about to make our lunar injection. Switching spheres of influence. The game has always been lagging lately on the newest version, right when you switch a sphere of influence, but I can manage to get through that. Just don't be accelerating at 100,000 times when you do it, basically. Here we are preparing to do our capture burn. Circularizing the orbit fairly nicely, and we're going to speed around the other side momentarily, and then do our EVAs to transfer the Kerbals from one spaceship to another. Now you'll notice I slowed down the video. When we do the EVAs, the hatch seems a little blocked by a parachute and some solar panels, but we get out just okay, and we're able to grab, and we were able to board. It gave us messages asking us if we wanted to do that. That's important for later. We'll come back to that. We get both Kerbals out successfully and over to the lander. Just a moment here, and then we'll detach and begin our descent burn, the deorbiting burn. Detach from the node. Switch over to the right craft, and about to turn on the engines. You want to be very careful not to accidentally disconnect the rover at the same time by hitting spacebar. There you go, there I go, switching the engines to another action group. I accidentally bump into the command module. I do a quick check and it ends up okay. Its orbit's not too affected, and here we go, about to go land on the surface. Just time accelerating in. Fly over the lunar arch there, spoiler. It's a little Easter egg on the moon. Structures are left all around this little solar system for you to find. We have a nice flat plane beneath us here, so I just decided to cut our landing trajectory a little short and fall right here. It seems like a perfect place to land. I think I'll switch to real time here in a moment so you can see the landing mechanics. There it is. Slowed down quite a bit. The radial engines are a lot more power than I needed. I could have gotten away with maybe 2 of them. Just you need the symmetry on this. But you just got to watch your power when you've got the engines like that. They will kick you straight up instead of slowing you down if you're not careful, if you're putting too much thrust out. You'll see I do that a little bit as we hit near the ground. I'm trying to control my speed delicately to prevent myself from dropping the rover from too high. That's going to be the next step, is making sure it lands safely. A little bit of lateral motion there, so I kick a little to the side. Slow myself down even more. I think we kick the rover off just in a moment here. To kind of bounce a little bit on top of it, but the craft actually I intentionally made tall enough such that I could have landed it, disconnected it, then flown away again. Would have had to be careful about not getting it on fire, but either way, we're here safely now. And we're about to EVA and get our Kerbals on the moon. Get one in the driver's seat really quick, and I get the other out to plant a flag. The rover is rolling away down the hill. Want it to be controlled. Plant our flag for the Reddit challenge here. This is the first one I've ever done. I mean, not that there are many that I could do very easily, but at this point, this is the first I've ever entered in. Now we drive our rover around, my first rover ever. The wheels are a little off. One's a little, some are a little higher or lower than the others. I didn't have good symmetry on them. And the moon is hard to drive on, but you can crash rather safely, as it turns out, because the low gravity means things don't run into each other with quite the same force as they do on other worlds. Drive around for a little bit to prove the point that, yes, I can successfully land a rover on the moon and successfully crash it. The rover itself actually survives for all of this, even though it looks a little hopeless here. As soon as the Kerbal gets out, he's able to kind of right it by pushing on it as he gets out of there. And you see the rover is fine. I decide that's probably enough, and as long as it's safe, I can come back to get it later. For now, we're going to put our Kerbals back in the spaceship and get back to orbit. Mooner rendezvous is something I have never done before, but I pretty much, given that it's not that difficult, all with such low gravity, I figured I could probably just fly straight up into my craft. I give it a little bit of a leadway and fly out and start doing some orbital maneuvers to see how things go. Set my target up and actually kind of overshot it a lot, so I just kind of turn straight up and burn. As close as I get, I realize it'll probably be easier just to circularize and then go around a few times to meet up with my ship. The main ship is not in a perfectly circular orbit, so I try and match it as much as I can, circularize myself, and then just watch my intersections to try and make sure I get a good one. And we've got a decent rendezvous. Fly by close to the moon. And given it doesn't take much delta V to change your position in lunar orbit, it's not that big of a deal to proceed as I've done here. You don't waste that much fuel, and I mean, if you look at the lander, I had plenty of fuel. And given the fact that I was already in orbit, I could have just rendezvoused with the service module's main engine. But here we go, we're pulling in close, using the target points on the nav ball to help guide our approach. Lock up the landing gear, get ourselves in rather close. We're going to point in one direction, and then we're actually going to do the docking maneuvers from the service module, the command module, both, because it has the RCS fuel that'll allow easy docking. So we get ourselves a little closer with RCS, and eventually we come in close enough to push ourselves right in. We're switching to docking mode. The new SAS calculation system makes it a little easier to use not perfectly balanced craft. These RCS thrusters are not perfectly balanced, but I still managed to get in without too much trouble. I edited a little out there so we can get right to business. And after a successful docking, we attempt to EVA, and here is a big technical issue. We kind of clip through the doors. I don't know if this is a glitch or if it's not recognizing the fact that I should be able to enter. You might say, oh, it's covered up with a parachute, but that's not really the case, because I was able to get out before and I could have gotten back in before, as I showed you in the slowed down sections earlier. So given the technical issues and the fact that we really can't start over all the way out here, Basically attribute it to a jammed hatch door and have to fly home with both modules. This is an Apollo 13 style error, really. You have to use the LM as a lifeboat, in a manner of speaking. I get myself into an orbit where I can easily push myself into an ocean landing, and simulations show that both ships could survive re-entry, but there are problems with when you happen to hit the water. The parachutes, for one, if you just rely on parachutes to slow you down, after you get to 500 meters, the force of the parachutes pulling you back will actually rip the craft in two. The docking port is just not strong enough of a connection to prevent the lunar module from being ripped asunder. Again, this is just, a simulation, that's quote unquote. When you hit 500 meters, the parachutes are just going to pull your craft apart, and the lunar module will smack into the water. You'll lose 2/3 of your crew. So another idea was thrown out there, which was transfer the fuel from the command module to the lunar module and then use the lunar module descent engines to slow your descent just before the parachutes deploy. What this would do is slow you down such that when the parachutes deployed, there wasn't as much speed they had to get rid of. And that docking port should then survive. This is a very good idea and is key to the eventual survival of the crew, but what happens is if you just go straight into the water with both things attached together, the force of the water pushing the lunar module up into the command module basically destroys the lunar module. The command module just is, a knife, slices right through the lunar module and kills the crew. And only the lone commander survives. So one other approach, the final approach, the ultimate solution was use the engines to burn, slow down the craft such that the parachutes didn't rip it in two. And then, so you did not have the same problem before where you cut through the craft and killed the Kerbals beneath the service module, turn off 3 of the engines and tilt the craft as far to the right as possible using the internal torque. Then, as you're about to hit the water, turn on the one remaining engine, and the hope in the simulations proved that you can hit the water horizontally, you'll smack into the water pretty hard, but your command modules will survive and all 3 Kerbals will have a safe return. Of course, we never intended to bring the lunar module back from the moon. We had hoped all 3 Kerbals would just be in the command module, but this is the way we had to do it. But after a hard landing, everybody's alive, mission completed. So that's the video. I thank you for watching.